With the need to reduce government expenditure is critical, but above it all, it intends to improve service delivery. However, to achieve this, government plans to merge over 30 agencies or have them returned to mother ministries.
The change may help in the fight against corruption, depending on what type of corruption we are dealing with. Is it institutional? Is it systematic? Is it political? What kind of corruption is it? Has it been a conduit for individuals to amass wealth and so on? So it could be one of the vehicles whereby corruption can be dealt with, but I don't think that fighting corruption can be dealt with only this intervention alone. I think corruption needs to be tackled in a multifaceted format. You cannot just do this and say we are fighting corruption. I'm sure there are other spaces where corruption will escape, and we also need to have an intervention in that space as well.
So the occasion of seen government creating entities after one another.
Yes.
Let me give you an example. If you talk of anti-corruption unity, we are saying the investors unity and to fight corruption. We are seeing IDBs meetings. There is this last time we had about. There are many entities which have come out. Are you seeing it of importance of solving some issues whereby they end up coming up with different entities, organizations, or committees to address some issues? Is it necessary really in Uganda?
I think there isn't one single institution worldwide that can fight corruption. I think we need all hands on board. The challenge then becomes those institutions that are picking from the national purse to fight corruption. I think that is where the government is trying to make an intervention. But otherwise, so many institutions are fighting corruption. Some of them are not even touching the government purse. Others are being supported by donors and so on and so forth. And sometimes we forget that you have religious leaders, we have cultural leaders, and we have lecturers and all these other spaces which are in one way or another dealing with the question of corruption. So the institutions themselves may not necessarily be the problem, all right? Although they do contribute insofar as they may be possible avenues for corruption to happen or possible avenues for fight against corruption to occur. But I think the most important message for us is to know that we need a big...
Top on the list of government agencies to be merged include Uganda National Road Authority UNRA, Equal Opportunities Commission, Coffee Development Authority, National Information Technology Authority of Uganda, among others.
Cost of administration also was getting higher and higher.
The process, which is ongoing, last week, members of parliament under the NRM caucus held a meeting with the president to discuss how best the rationalization of these entities should be done without attracting legal suits that may result into financial loss to the taxpayer.
Mainly, it is to make government more efficient and also to reduce on the number of spaces where government is spending money. So the idea is that, as I understand it, that if government is able to have one entity or one ministry do a job that is being done by 2 or 3 others, then that possibility can be done. Now, most of these entities, probably not all of them, some of them do employ under the Employment Act, whereas others may be employing under the public service rules. In whichever case scenario, there are provisions already in the law which provide for termination of contracts or the realignment of a contract. And when someone is aggrieved, we have the whole industrial court that is available to those who may be aggrieved by the decisions of the employers.
Dr. Daniel Ruhweza, the acting head of Department, School of Law and Jurisprudence at Makerere University, highlights what the law stipulates in case such entities are to be merged.
I think to one extent, there will be the slight inconvenience of movement of troops. And by troops, I use it in just as a, as a metaphor. There will be that slight inconvenience on government moving certain entities to be either under or associated with others. But I think that what might happen is that government will, and I think is trying to cut costs. Seeing the economic challenges that we are having as a nation, I think the idea is that. Two, governance. I think one of the reasons behind it is that if you have disparities, for example, in the payment of salaries, one group doing a similar job is receiving less money than another, the idea is for that to be rectified by the government in resolving those salary disparities. But I don't think that the government per se will receive a specific challenge unless someone contests against a decision successfully in a court of law. But I know that the Attorney General's office and those that advise the government are well aware of those challenges, and that they will seek to find the most amicable solution to resolve this problem, if at all a problem arises. But what I see is that many of these institutions or parastatals have already been advised. They have an idea of one way or another. Talks have been going on. I'm aware of certain talks happening between certain government officials and certain institutions, and so it will not come really as a surprise for those that are going to be realigned, if at all that happens. Yeah. The Attorney General's office, the Solicitor General will advise on how best it will be done. So I am very sure that when that happens, that there will be a legal process that will be done, carefully thought of, to address some of the issues that may arise. And in case parties are not satisfied, there are so many lawyers, there's the Uganda Law Society that can advise them on what to do, and they can seek recourse in the courts of law.
Since these entities are created under the Parliament Act, they have different policies and laws that govern them, with some falling under the Employment Act and public service laws.
It is not far-fetched to think that policies can be rethought and merged, or that there can be similes or similarities found between policies, or that actually a policy under which an institution is working can actually still remain relevant, even if that specific institution is not the one that is carrying out a specific government objective. So that even including the laws, it is still possible for there to be a law, for example, a law that provides for that is against discrimination, and any other institution is able to deal with those specific issues. It may be the High Court, it may be the Human Rights Commission, it could be anything, and that's just an example, depending on what it is that is required at that moment. Yeah, so policies per se do not necessarily have to be changed. Laws may have to be changed and amended. But remember, all this is done under the Constitution of the Republic of Uganda. So if the Constitution is providing for certain things, and there's been an institution that had been set up specifically for that issue, and that institution is then merged with the parent ministry or some other institution, I think at the end of the day, you're trying to ensure as a government, I think the government is trying to ensure, how do we maximize efficiency, how do we maximize the effective use of the national paths that we have, and how do we deal with disparities that may be happening amongst those who are employed differently.
The yet to be merged agencies have over 1,000 employees whose contracts are still valid to date.
The only constant thing is change. The only constant thing is change. As I argue in my book, we don't teach that at the university. The only constant thing is change. So we should expect change all the time. We heard about certain things happening during COVID. Who knew that would have a lockdown situation? The lockdown happened, you get it. So even in this case, we must always be aware of the fact that there will be always changes in the way things are happening, in the way things are done. Wars and other things, acts of God, frustration, all those that are provided for in the constitution of you, in the laws of this nation, can happen, will happen, may happen. So in that situation, therefore, you may not clearly say that we did not see this coming. I think we should always expect certain changes to happen, certain changes to occur, and when they do, how flexible are we? So I guess as human beings, we ought to be flexible. If I lost my job today, do I go on a hunger strike? Do I kill myself? What do I do? Are there alternative things that I can easily be able to do, or that I'm already doing that can sustain me? Yeah. So the only constant thing is change. If you're employed under the Employment Act, there are sections in that act that do provide for you to either receive your terminal benefits, for notice to be given, for reasons, if any, or for the lapse of a contract, or even for frustration of a contract that has happened under the law of contract. Under public service, the same is possible. That's why you've heard of situations whereby people who have been serving in the public service are then appointed as judges or given any other employment, maybe as the Inspectorate of Government.
Although the government proposes to rationalize these agencies, those who are likely to be affected are the employees in these entities. Dr. Reza also advised government on how best the entities can be merged to avoid the would-be circumstances to both government and the employees.
I think what the government should do is to seek legal counsel, and I'm sure there's a whole Attorney General's office and the Attorney General Counsel Kirio Wakiwanuka and his team, I'm sure, are advising. A lot of consultation is important, and I think that the government is well suited to do that, such that there is a phased change. I would propose phased change instead of abrupt change of things, such that people can easily move from one place to another. Those that need to be compensated, I would really vouch that they be compensated. Those who can take on new contracts, I hope those possibilities are available so that Ugandans can remain employed.
To avoid legal technicalities that may result in legal suits in courts of law in the emerging of these entities, a motion is yet to be presented to Parliament for each of the agents, since each was separately created by Parliament